Hi everyone, Josie Howard from the Little Birdie magazine, and we've got our Pink Chair chat this month, which is February, which is our love month. I've got Darren Frakes from Bank of Queensland here with me, and Darren has pretty recently taken over the Bank of Queensland in Aikenvale. How are you, Darren?
Good, Josie. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah. That's all right. Now, I specifically asked you in to give us a little bit of an idea around young couples buying their first property. What do they do with the bank? When do they go for finance? You know, how hard is it for young couples at the moment to get finance?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. Obviously, with all the talk about interest rates rising, my suggestion would be to come and see the bank as soon as you are serious about looking at for a home.
Yeah.
The sooner you can come in and see us, the better we can give you some information of what you need and then point you in the right direction.
Yeah. And what sort of things do young couples need to think about? Because it's a different world to what it was 20 years ago, where somebody went into a job and they had the same job for 20 years. There's a lot of people doing casual work, part-time work, or being self-employed or subcontracting. What do they need? Do they need like 3 pay slips or something? Or what sorts of, I guess, historical savings and things do they need to show to the bank?
Yep.
And you guys are a bit different because you own the bank franchise.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's not, they're dealing with you, not someone in Sydney or Melbourne or somewhere else.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I own the branch that at Aikenvale. So when they come in, they'll see the staff, and they actually work for me. They don't work for the bank. But to your question about what someone needs, two most recent pay slips.
Yeah.
But I think first and foremost, they really need to understand how much they want to pay back. Because if they work out how much they can afford, they can then look at the right house prices for their own needs. And
how do they work that out though? Because obviously Townsville is still pretty undervalued with a lot of its property compared to most of the east coast of Australia in cities. How do they know? Do you know what I mean? Like there's a huge difference between spending, a couple of $100,000 on an apartment, which you can do in Townsville, or spending $1 million. Well, actually, $1 million buys you a lot in Townsville.
Correct. So, yeah, exactly.
On a waterfront property.
Yep.
So how do they, if they're on good salaries, or not, or just trying to consider buying a home instead of facing, I guess, the rental crisis we've got at the moment.
Yeah, well, if they're paying rent, they'll have an understanding of how much they're currently paying. And so, if they're paying $500 a week in rent, they might say that's all we can afford to pay. So if they come in and speak to us, we'll be able to say, right, well, on $500 a week, this gives you a certain amount of borrowing capacity, and you can go from there. Quite often someone will come in and they're looking at a house and you'll say, well, the repayments are actually $1,000 a week, and they go, well, we just can't afford that. So, and the other thing about it too is that, with rates rising, the repayment today may not be the repayment in 6 months' time. So that's something else that they've got to consider.
It's showing my age, but I do remember when rates were well and truly into double digits back in the 90s.
Yeah, well, 16, 17%, I think, was some of the rates at those days. So
I think we paid more. It's like 19%, some crazy amount for a while.
Yeah. You'll hear people, they'll say the house prices weren't as expensive back then, though. But
Northern Beaches of Sydney,
absolutely.
It was pretty steep still. So, and I guess that's the trick too. Like, how early do they come in to see you? Because obviously the earlier the better, right? So they can start to build a relationship up with you.
Yep.
They can come in for some advice.
Yep, 100%, yeah.
To find out what they need to do, how much deposit they need to save.
Yep, definitely. And if they come in early too, we might say, well, look, you need an extra 5% deposit, and that will give them time to save for that money.
Yeah.
I would always recommend, as soon as you start looking for homes, you should come in and start looking at your bank and seeing what you can actually do. Because unless you know those two parts of it, you might be
it hard.
Correct. Yeah.
And a lot of contracts I've found in Queensland are giving pretty, they want pretty short, quick turnarounds, I guess, on finance.
Yep.
And although we're a little bit luckier up here than down south, where you get a couple of weeks usually to have finance approved,
yep.
The turnaround is then just a couple of weeks after that. So you want to make sure probably you've got your finance approved first, right, before you even start looking, essentially.
Yeah, well, these days now when you do finance, there's a lot of information that we need to get from you. So again, by coming in early, you'll know what that information is. So it's pay slips, it's statements, there's other information as well. So the earlier you can come in, we can collate that information. We can actually hold that on file for 3 months. And then, so after 3 months, we need updated information. But again, you don't want to be worrying about finance when you've signed a contract on a house.
No.
So if we can put that part to rest, or, it allows the transition, because there's so many other things going on at the same time.
Yeah, and there are, and it's quite an emotional time when you're buying your first home, and and it's a big thing. Oh, look, not even your first home, right? Pretty well any home.
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
doesn't matter when it is.
It's a stressful time. So and our job is to try and make it less stressful. Yeah.
And I was going to say you've got the other end too, a lot in Townsville, where you've got people who are out in the suburbs whose families have all grown up, and they suddenly want to buy an apartment on the Strand and downsize.
Yep.
It's kind of a similar thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
that whole downsizing works in reverse as well.
Yep.
And we quickly mentioned you suggested that who was the economist who had
it was Craig James today on Sunrise, I think.
Yeah, so today's Monday the 23rd. Kids have just gone back to school today and tomorrow.
Yep.
Craig James has suggested there might only be one more
rate rise this year. So I guess it's who you speak to. I don't think anyone would have forecasted the rates would have gone up so quickly in such a short time. So I guess...
but nobody actually guessed that they were going to go down so quickly either originally when they started heading south.
No, there's a lot of people that come out after it all happens that says, I predicted this. I think, Tuesday, first Tuesday in February, they'll be meeting. So we'll wait and see what the Reserve Bank do then. Yeah,
well, the magazine will come out that week. So we'll be still sitting with Craig James to see if he was, to see if he was right or not.
Yeah, correct.
And tell me a little bit about yourself. So, I mean... This is a nice thing in Townsville. There are lots of really personal stories with business owners. So how long have you been a local for?
I was born in Townsville. So
oh, really? Completely Townsville bred?
Completely Townsville, born and bred. I've had a couple of years out of Townsville, but I was born in Townsville and lived most of my life here. So married and got two beautiful young daughters. Well, they're not young anymore, but...
No, you just said one's about to head back down south to go to uni.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, great.
So I've lived in Townsville all my life, and, I have a lot of mates and friends that I've made over the years. So
yeah, it's a beautiful city. I mean, it's absolutely stunning. Absolutely love it. I've only been here 4 years, which I keep saying in these interviews. Everyone will get sick of it, I know. But came here for a few days, came back 3 weeks later because I loved it so much. So, it's one of those cities that I think is a bit of a hidden jewel. People don't realise it's here.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably grown up a lot since it went through that slump a few years ago.
Yep.
And I think it was... probably had a lot of sophistication back then because the town was booming, but it stopped for a while, and I think all of that is coming back again. Yeah,
it's a resilient town, that's for sure. I mean, we've got such a diverse range of, things out there that keep the economy going. There are negative parts to it as well, but I think if you sit back and look at all towns in Queensland, there's negative parts to
all towns around Australia, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. Like, we sometimes only hear certain stories out of here.
Yeah.
There are so many fantastic stories. People often ask me, have you got enough content to put a monthly magazine together? And it's like, well, we have way too much content.
Yeah.
The good content's not the problem.
Yeah.
So there is lots and lots happening here that's really, really good. And everything from major, infrastructure projects to tiny little bespoke creative people, our last cover launching bespoke handmade hats, It's an amazing city. Restaurants opening up all the time here. There's another one opening, I know, on Wednesday that I'm going to. It's just a very dynamic, sophisticated city that forgets to tell everybody it is pretty well, I think, correct. Sometimes.
No, it's a great place. I love living here. Obviously, it's hot during summer, but in winter, it's probably the best place to live. So,
it is. And even fortunate. Summer, everyone has an aircon, right? And I always say, I grew up in Griffith. Griffith is a dry oven. At least there's a little bit of humidity here to wet your lungs with kind of a thing. and you've got the ocean here too, so
yeah, we're blessed here. It's great.
The ocean, aircon, a swimming pool,
and a brewery,
and a few breweries now. We've got quite a few craft breweries now. We've been focusing on these guys for a bit, but we'll actually start to go out to Maggie Island again and the Tiny Mountain Brewery as well.
Yep.
So you're a local.
Yep.
You love the place.
Yep.
Do you have a banking career? Is that?
Yeah, I've worked in banking now nearly 20 years, including BOQ. So, and I've had a couple of years in private enterprise. So,
which is good for
it's
businesses who are coming to you for finance.
Yep. So back in 2019, I came back into banking and was lucky enough to work with David and Lisa at BOQ Castletown.
Yep.
And then nearly 12 months ago now, an opportunity to purchase the Aikenvale branch came up. And
was Aikenvale branch always there, or is it a brand new branch?
Yeah, it was owner managed up until 2020.
Yeah.
And the previous owner manager sold it back to the bank. So it's basically been for nearly 2 years, or just over 2 years. It was owned by the bank. So it moved from Kmart across to Stockland in early 2020. So.
I didn't know exactly where it was when I went to meet you one day, and I went to ask someone and realised it was right behind me.
Yep.
So it's a little tricky to find, but not too hard. No. And it's like, Bank of Queensland has been around for how long has Bank of Queensland been around with this one?
Well, you put me on notice there.
I say that because I do know I had a lot of dealings with them down in Toowoomba too at one point. So.
Yeah, so I think they're largely, the major footprint is in Queensland, obviously, but there are branches in New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia and Perth, or Western Australia. So they're trying to grow that footprint. But Bank of Queensland, and that's why that BOQ comes into it, because they're trying to diversify down in those other markets. Yeah,
and what makes you guys special compared to the other banks?
Oh, it definitely has been the owner manager. So, the staff work for me. I'm in there, so I've got a major interest in making sure we look after our customers. And as I say to people, I'm going to be there for a long time. So I know a lot of the things that people say is they can't speak to someone, or if they do speak to someone, a month later that person's gone. So, with BOQ Aikenvale, I'll be there for a long time, and my staff
with a vested interest,
correct,
of course,
100%.
too, to make sure you do good business.
So and then and my staff, we've got a great team. So everyone's working together to make sure that experience is that personal experience and not just that 1-800 number that we get,
or a robo call.
Correct.
Kind of that's good. Favourite restaurant in town?
Oh, Touch of Salt.
There you go. We've had different ones today. It's been really good.
Mark and Michael would not talk to me if I didn't mention them.
Look, that's great. And they just got a chef hat as well. Everyone who's mentioned a restaurant today has been a recently hatted restaurant.
Oh, awesome.
Townsville's had 3 recently hatted, which is brilliant.
Yep.
I actually had a great lunch at Touch of Salt not that long ago myself, and it is a wonderful place to eat.
Yeah, 100%.
Service is always incredible there. I have to say it's probably, I think, the best service in town.
Yep.
Consistently.
Yes. Yeah.
Every time you go there, you're going to get good service. There's other places that do good service, but Touch of Salt, those guys have it down.
Correct. Yeah. Now that their dad Peter stepped back a little bit too, it's he's out there annoying all the people coming in. So
I know they stole the front of house manager from the yacht club. The great,
right.
I can't think of his name.
Yep.
Italian guy, brilliant. Made me a special gin cocktail for lunch the other day. Yeah, it wasn't on the menu. And that's the sort of service you want, right? And
100%.
You get that there every single time. So it's wonderful. Well, Darren, thank you so much for coming along today and enjoying a beer with me.
Thank you.
We can finish those afterwards.
For sure.
And look, I'm sure we'll have you back again soon. People are really interested in what's happening around finance and banking and interest rates and, what that's going to look like. And I guess everybody needs a little bit of help navigating how best to do it. And for all you young couples out there, come and see Darren. He'll handhold you through that process of looking at buying your own property. And I remember, way back when buying the first property, and the advice was always that if you're ready to do it, just go and do it. Because the markets change constantly, but you need
no better time than now.
Exactly, right. And come and see Darren when you need to. Okay, thanks everyone. Thank you, Darren.
Not a problem. Thank you.
We will see you again soon.
Cheers.